Not all pirate adventures go the way you hope. For Old Man Taylor here, his adventure today had not gone the way he had hoped. He thought maybe using his ship's water bucket would help solve the problem, but then he realized that line of thinking made no sense. He assessed the situation, which grew increasingly grim. Maybe this was it, the end of his Sea of Thieves journey. And as each second passed, his fate and his ship's fate seemed increasingly sealed. With his glory days of piracy far behind him, and the water far above his head, he felt there was no possible way to deal with the single Tier 1 hole wreaking havoc on his boat. But then, he regained hope. This was no way for a pirate to go out. He shook off his arthritic wrists and began to bucket some water out of the ship. This went well until he got distracted by a lantern light and needed a reminder on how to properly deal with the hole. If it wasn't already clear, Old Man Taylor is very, very old. A pirate legend among legends, Old Man Taylor had been pirating far beyond the years he should have been. In his older age, everything takes significantly more time, and his confusion impacts him far more than it used to. Although it was due time for him to leave the seas forever, his ship sinking to a Tier 1 hole would not be the way he would go out. Before moving on from the seas, he knew he wanted one more big farewell adventure, a heist of epic proportions. And where better to loot and steal than Daggertooth Outpost? With his destination of Daggertooth Outpost set, from Twin Groves he set sail to the west, which was the opposite direction in which he should be going. He climbed up to the crow's nest and checked out the horizons. While staring directly in the direction of Port Merrick, he loudly proclaimed, "There it is, Daggertooth Outpost, just like I remember." With his shaky hands steering the ship, he successfully threaded the needle between a rock arch as he got closer to Port Merrick, believing it was Daggertooth. Still a solid distance offshore, Old Man Taylor slammed the anchor of his ship, claiming that parking too close to the outpost would give away his grand heist plans. I don't believe Old Man Taylor realized parking practically in the middle of the ocean made his presence at Port Merrick far more suspicious. Now for the heist. Upon jumping into the water to swim closer to the island, my mermaid popped, thus confusing Old Man Taylor. So Old Man Taylor took my mermaid, which returned him to his ship that he had just jumped off just seconds prior. "The best way into Daggertooth Outpost is going through the sewers," he proclaimed. "They have a shark who guards here, but don't worry, I'll get it," shouted Old Man Taylor. He swung his sword, convinced it had made contact with and killed the shark guarding, not realizing the shark he thought he had just killed was actually directly behind him. Believing the path ahead of him was clear, he swam into the sewers, and the guard shark took a solid bite right out of him. Old Man Taylor swam quickly as his life now depended on it, pulling himself up onto the underwater dock of the Captain's Head Tavern. With such a long swim from his ship, and now the wound from the shark, Old Man Taylor had to take a long rest, while the guard shark behind him aggressively chomped his teeth for more Old Man Taylor meat. Old Man Taylor definitely dozed off for a bit before being woken up by a pineapple that I put in his face. When he did finally wake up, Old Man Taylor showed the shark guard who was boss once and for all. Having conquered the guards, it was now time to pull off the heist of the century by stealing the ultimate treasure he'd come all the way to Daggertooth Outpost for, a chain shot from the barrel of Captain's Head Tavern. He also checked their treasure door, but it was most definitely locked. So as to not deal with any more sharks, he took the above ground path back to his ship. Only upon arriving at the docks, he was convinced someone must have stolen his ship, because he claimed to have left his boat there. I reminded him that he had chosen to park his boat about a mile offshore on the other side of the island. Now that he was reminded of where his ship actually was, Old Man Taylor bolted to the other side of the island. Daggertooth Outpost has really gone downhill, he proclaimed as he ran barefoot through the streets of Port Merrick. Successfully taking my mermaid back to his ship, he could now celebrate. One final successful heist to close out his thousands and thousands of days of piracy. He took one more view of the seas from his crow's nest, and then took a look at his map to decide where he'd like to go next. Perhaps into the Red Sea, to explore the unexplored. Or perhaps he'd throw his body into a volcano. Both ideas were ideas he was clearly interested in, but neither would come true, as now that his Sea of Thieves story had been completed, The Sea of Thieves gods whisked him away just as he set his ship sailing. Old Man Taylor was now gone from the seas, leaving behind a number of legacies. Old Man Taylor, the Shark Hunter. Old Man Taylor, the Mermaid Whisperer. Old Man Taylor, the King of all heists. Yet the most important legacy of all, Old Man Taylor, a legend to the Sea of Thieves.